Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's headlines, Prime Minister Netanyahu proposes resuming land for peace talks with the Palestinians with an initial focus on defining areas where Israel could expand Jewish settlements in the West Bank. Palestinians fire a rocket from the Gaza Strip which explodes near the Israeli port city of Ashdod. The German ambassador to the United States stresses that sanctions relief for Iran under a potential nuclear agreement would not take place before the end of this year. A senior aide to Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Israeli Prime Minister has proposed resuming land for peace talks with the Palestinians, but with an initial focus on defining areas where Israel could expand Jewish settlements in the West Bank.
גושי ההתיישבות הם יהיו בחלק ממדינת ישראל בכל הסדר עתידי אם וכאשר יהיה כזה.
When asked about Netanyahu's position, a spokesman for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas stressed that the Jewish settlement activity must stop on lands the Palestinians want for their future state, and all core issues of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict must be addressed simultaneously.
أنا بعتقد أنه ما تحدث به نتنياهو حول مسألة التفاوض حول ما يسمى الكتل الاستيطانية الاستعمارية في أراضي الدولة الفلسطينية هو مرفوض تماما. نحن نعتبر جميع الاستيطان الاستعماري في أراضي الدولة الفلسطينية التي احتلت بعدوان 67 ما فيها القدس العاصمة هو غير شرعي وغير قانوني، وهناك قرارات صادرة عن مجلس الأمن الدولي والجمعية الأمم المتحدة أكدت على عدم شرعية تقنية الاستيطان وطالبت بإزالة كل الاستيطان الاستعماري من أراضي الدولة الفلسطينية.
Peace talks collapsed in April of last year when President Mahmoud Abbas angered Israel by reaching a unity deal with internationally recognized terror organization Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip and calls for the destruction of the Jewish state. Another reason for the collapse of the negotiations was due to Israeli settlement building on lands the Palestinians demand will be part of their future state in any final negotiated agreement. In a meeting in Jerusalem last week, Netanyahu told the European Union's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini, it was clear that major Jewish settlement blocks in the West Bank and East Jerusalem will remain under Israeli control, while other parts would be transferred to the Palestinian control. In other news, Palestinians fired a rocket from the Gaza Strip last night, which exploded near the Israeli port city of Ashdod. No injuries or damage were reported. In response to the rocket fire, Israel launched airstrikes in the southern Gaza Strip on what the IDF referred to as terror infrastructure. Spokeswoman of the Israeli Local Regional Council said the explosion came as a surprise as no sirens were sounded to warn the civilians.
Around 9 o'clock, there was a sound of an explosion. No sirens were heard, but we understand that apparently a rocket, a missile, was launched from the Gaza Strip towards our area. For now, there are no special instructions for the civilians. We will continue as usual. Schools will be opened. We have instructed, just for safety purposes, to open all shelters.
There was no immediate claim of responsibility in Gaza for the rocket launching, but Hamas has announced that it has arrested some suspects. According to security analysts, rival Palestinian factions in Gaza may have precipitated the rocket firing without the permission of Gaza's Islamist Hamas rulers. Rival militant factions in Gaza are angry that months after the end of the war with the Jewish state, during which the Palestinians launched thousands of rockets and mortar shells towards Israel's civilian population, and Israeli shelling and airstrikes battered the Palestinian enclave, no progress has been made to improve the isolated territory's plight and pledges for funding the reconstruction of buildings devastated during the war. The claims by the Palestinian factions in Gaza contradict the fact, however, that since the international community pledged $3.5 billion earmarked for the reconstruction of Gaza, $945 million have reached the Palestinian enclave, but as of now, none of the 12,400 housing units destroyed in the war had been rebuilt, as reported by the UN Shelter Cluster Organization. That said, security officials noted that the Islamist Hamas has started reconstructing attack tunnels on its borders with the Jewish state, as well as advancing its attempts to acquire weapons in a bid to restock its weapons caches. Meanwhile, the grim situation in the Gaza Strip keeps deteriorating as Israel maintains a partial blockade on the Gaza Strip, while Egypt largely keeps the Rafah border crossing closed. Hamas has imposed a so-called solidarity tax, and salaries for workers not aligned with the Palestinian Authority are not being paid in full. Now to a new report in which Amnesty International accused Hamas of war crimes against civilians in Gaza during last year's conflict with the Jewish state. The Amnesty report said that the Hamas security organizations kidnapped, tortured, and murdered individuals suspected of collaborating with Israel. They were given a free hand by the leadership to commit shocking acts of violence in order to take revenge on their opponents and to instill fear amongst the residents of Gaza. The report said that some of the actions met the qualification for war crimes. Last month, the Palestinians joined the International Criminal Court in The Hague, a course of action that will allow them to file complaints against the Jewish state for war crimes, but could also expose them to similar claims. Now to the ongoing negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The German ambassador to the United States stressed that sanctions relief for Tehran under a potential nuclear agreement would not take place before the end of this year under the best-case scenario.
In return for Iran's compliance, there would be sanctions relief of the UN sanctions, of EU sanctions, of US sanctions gradually, and that's very important. It would happen gradually in the fields of economy, trade, and finance. Iran needs some time to start the implementation of this agreement, so in the best case, sanctions relief would not happen before the end of this year. In addition, this agreement would provide guarantees that sanctions could be back in place if Iran violates the agreement, the so-called snapback mechanism.
The French ambassador to the United States also said it was possible there might be a so-called fuzzy end to the Iran negotiations, even if an agreement is reached in late June or early July. Technical annexes spelling out the details might need to be finalized after wider agreement is reached.
So we are going to have a sort of melodrama at the end of June, ministers not sleeping, door slammed, I'm leaving to Tehran, no way, and so on, to try to get the best deal. But even if we get the best deal, afterwards you have to translate it into the technical annexes. So it may be, we could have a sort of fuzzy end to the negotiation.
A self-imposed deadline set for the 30th of June looms for the P5+1, the United States, Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany, to reach an agreement to curb Iran's nuclear program in exchange for an end to sanctions on Tehran. Iran contends its nuclear program is only for peaceful purposes and rejects allegations from Western countries and their allies that it is pursuing a nuclear weapon. Thank you for watching us. You can also watch us at tv7, israelnews.com, or tv7.fi. For any comments, please send your emails to israelnews@tv7.fi. For more updates from Israel and the region, please join our Facebook page at TV7 Israel News. Keep praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hassan. Have an Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.